Montero is here to discuss the Year of Du Bois, the significance and relevance of Du Bois' work and legacy, not only in history but in the contemporary context. We make it plain and we make it relevant, and we thank you, Dr. Anthony Montero, for joining us once again on the program, Waking Up with Word.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a great pleasure again to be here. Professor Smith, a lot is going on in the world. You may have heard of what happened up in New York with this young woman, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who upset in the Democratic primary for Congress, upset this 10-term congressman. And she ran as a socialist, which is very interesting.
Wow. You're Democratic socialist,
and 3 women ran in Western Pennsylvania. Young women ran as socialists and upset, machine Democrats also. And it's very relevant to Du Bois because, he was a lifelong socialist.
Wow.
And we're looking at these ideological conflicts going on within the country. The Pew Foundation did a poll about 5 years ago and found that about 43% then of young people identified themselves as socialist.
Wow.
But the thing for black young people was that about 50% identified themselves as socialists. Now, this is very relevant given what I consider to be the crisis that young people and all people face under the existing economic order. And we have to question it. I don't think we will, navigate our way out of this unless we are able to critically engage the system. And so Du Bois, he went to Germany in 1892. He got a scholarship to do graduate work there at Humboldt University. And he visited the socialist part of Berlin, where the Socialist Party was strong. He didn't know that much about it. Then when he comes back to the United States, among other things, he joins the Socialist Party and for a while supported Eugene V. Debs, the leading socialist of that time. But he criticized Debs because Debs did not understand the color line in the question of race. But he remained a socialist. In 1926, after being kind of not committal about the Russian Revolution, he goes to the Soviet Union, and he says, if what I've seen is Bolshevism, then I am a Bolshevik, which means if what I've seen is socialism, then I'm a socialist. And of course, in the 1930s, he debates both with the NAACP and the Communist Party over the question of what he called a nation within a nation. And he called for a cooperative economy of black people because the government, even under Franklin Roosevelt and the New Deal, discriminated in the ways that it supported the poor and the unemployed. And so Du Bois said we have to do a cooperative economy within what he then called a nation within a nation. In the 1950s, he comes out for peace, and the government targets him as an enemy of the government and as an agent of a foreign government. He says, I'm not an agent of any government, I'm an agent of peace. And then they kept harassing him, they took his passport and so on. And he, as I think I've said this before when we've read Du Bois, he said, look, blessed are the peacemakers, for they're going to be called communists. Is that praise for the communists or condemnation for the peacemakers? That was his way of satirically and ironically addressing the absurdity of smearing someone who stood for peace, or as in the case of Martin Luther King, who stood for civil rights. Oh, you must be a communist. A black person cannot think of freedom without being directed by an external force. They took Du Bois's passport. He had a new wife, Shirley Graham Du Bois, and they fought it. He finally gets his passport back. He travels to Europe, the Soviet Union, and to China. He stays for 10 weeks in China, and he studies the social systems of these parts of the world. And then he finally composes his last autobiography, entitled The Autobiography of W.E.B. Du Bois, a soliloquy. And there's a part in it where he addresses his idea and belief in socialism. And I'd just like to read that if we have time.
Yes, sir.
He says, I've studied socialism and communism long and carefully in lands where they are practiced, and in conversation with their adherents, and with wide reading. I now state my conclusion frankly and clearly. I believe in communism. I mean by communism a planned way of life, in the production of wealth and work designed for building a state whose object is the highest welfare of its people, and not merely the profit of a part. I believe that all men should be employed according to their ability, and that wealth and services should be distributed according to need. Once I thought that these ends could be attained under capitalism, means of production privately owned and used in accord with free individual initiative. After earnest observation, I now believe that private ownership of capital and free enterprise are leading the world to disaster. I do not believe that the so-called people's capitalism has in the United States or anywhere replaced the ills of private capitalism and shown an answer to socialism. The corporation is but the legal mass behind which the individual owner of wealth hides. Democratic government in the United States has almost ceased to function. A fourth of the adults are disenfranchised. Half the legal voters do not go to the polls. We are ruled by those who control wealth and who by that power buy or coerce public opinion. I resent the charge that communism is a conspiracy. Communists often conspire, as do capitalists. But it is false that all communists are criminals and that communism speaks and exists mainly by means of force and fraud. I shall therefore hereafter help the triumph of communism in every honest way that I can, without deceit or hurt, and in any way possible without war, and with goodwill to all men of all colors, classes, and creeds. If, because of this belief and such action, I become the victim of attack and calumny, I will react in the way that seems to me best for the world in which I live and which I have tried earnestly to serve. I know well that the triumph of communism will be a slow and difficult task, involving mistakes of every sort. It will call for progressive change in human nature and a better type of manhood and womanhood than is common today. I believe this possible, or otherwise we will continue to lie, steal, and kill as we are doing today. Who now am I to have come to these conclusions? And what, if any, significance are my deductions? What has been my life and work, and of what meaning to mankind? The final answer to these questions, time and posterity must make. But perhaps it is my duty to contribute whatever enlightenment I can. This is the excuse for my writing this last autobiography. So that's Du Bois.
No, it's powerful. I was thinking when you were talking about the passport, when I was jotting down, I remember Most Def, the artist, they had similar issues with speaking his mind, talking not only against the prison industrial complex, but capitalism, police brutality, a myriad of other, issues that seem to be taboo if you want, mainstream acceptance as an African-American artist or political figure. And, he had issues where he couldn't return to the country. They were, concerned about his passport and just a long legacy of this. And the communism connection, he with allegations like with Paul Robeson, messing with your passport, messing with your money.
Assata Shakur.
Yeah, still going through it. I wrote Stokely Carmichael had similar issues.
Yes.
Robert F. Williams, Negroes and Guns. He went to the People's Republic of China and also to Cuba. So this idea of, if you leave and you speak in truth, we don't want you to come back,
Yeah, well, if you question critically the nature of the economic and political system, if you want to answer the question or ask the question, why is all the wealth in the United States concentrated in a very, very few hands? Why is there 1% that controls everything? Why is it that in this very wealthy country, for some, we can walk around Center City and see so many homeless people.
And starving people.
That's right.
If they don't go to trash cans, they wouldn't even eat.
That's right. Triple the number of starving or hungry children in a decade in Philadelphia.
Yeah, the poorest big city, right?
My point.
Yeah.
And so at some point, if we are honest, if we are moral, and if we are critical thinkers, we have to ask questions about the system. And we have to do it, I guess this is your name, fearlessly.
No, that's
without fear. Yes.
That's the only way it can get done.
Yes.
Because you already know the opposition that's going to, historically, the names we just mentioned, we know it wouldn't be easy. If somebody decided to talk against the military-industrial complex, like say critically just analyze capitalism or politics in general in America, that history shows with almost a significant degree of certainty, you will face significant opposition.
There is no question.
Yeah, there's sacrifices that are going to be made, or your life sometimes.
And your life.
It's a serious struggle.
And one of the this past weekend we had a symposium at the Church of the Advocate. There's a wonderful article on it in the Tribune written by Samaria Bailey.
Okay.
And we looked at 5 women. We were talking about the emancipation of women of the dark races. And one of them was Nina Simone.
Wow.
But also we looked at Shirley Graham Du Bois, Coretta Scott King, Winnie Mandela, and Indira Gandhi. But the thing is, I was so interested, even though I knew Nina Simone, or thought I knew Nina Simone, her greatness and her courage and her genius is beyond anything that I knew of, and I think most of us know of. And so sometimes when you just sit down with a group of 50, 100 people at a symposium, and you just look at and think about a figure of this magnitude. And where was she going? She was a good friend of Lorraine Hansberry. In fact, that was her best friend, the playwright,
Wow.
And she said in her autobiography, she said, we didn't talk about clothes and men and things, frivolous things like that. When we got together, we talked about Marx and Lenin. And I mean, it's just so deep.
Yeah, they say that some people talk about, the current events. Some people, talk about, trivial things. And then people of real significance talk about ideas.
That's right.
Great ideas.
Of genius and courage.
Yeah.
And it's not just enough to be smart. You have to have courage. And she had both. I mean, it was quite unbelievable.
Okay, we'll take a quick break, and we're going to come back because the phone lines are lit up as usual. Dr. Anthony Montero in studio, the Year of Du Bois, and Brother Timothy, Tyrone, everybody on the line. We are going to get to you and allow you to ask your questions of the good doctor on the other side. I'm Aaron Smith, the rapping professor. We have ideas and we have courage. She's Queen Kuwait's super producer. Put some respect on her name, and we will come back and talk to you for waking up with word, y'all.
Health. Moravia Health Home Care Services are an excellent option for individuals who need medical attention or even non-medical assistance with daily activities, but would rather receive this care in the comfort of their own homes. Make this change today. Come and experience Moravia Health for yourself. Call Moravia Health at 215-717-8650 or visit moraviahealth.com. Moravia Health, because there's no place like home.
Children who grow up in poverty are part of a destructive cycle. At Child Fund International, we find this unacceptable. In 25 countries, we are vigorously fighting poverty and improving the lives of children and their families. Learn more at childfund.org.
You're listening to Wake Up with Word on Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD, Independent Black Media.
Independent Black Media, 900 AM, 96.1 FM. Aaron Smith, rapping professor in the building, and Queen Kuwaisa. That has a Wakanda feel, it's Arab Black Panther. Wakanda forever. Wordkanda forever. Wordkanda, that's where we at right now. We in this utopia of black media, Wordkanda. And we're going to the phone lines. Brother Timothy from South Philly, you are on Waking Up with Word and with the good Dr. Anthony Montero in this Year of Du Bois. Thank you, good brother.
Dr. Smith, how are you, sir?
We're doing very well. How are you?
And you sound good. Dr. Montero, how are you, sir?
Fine, Timothy. And yourself?
Oh, Dr. Montero, so many subjects, man. I would like to talk about socialism and capitalism and things of that nature, and nationalism. But I want to talk about Nina. I guess we'll do the socialism at another time. You know, but I'm going to talk because I was there, man. I was very impressed. And we had wrestled around the room about a title other than whatever happened to Nina Simone. Like, she was just thrown away, a nobody. And I'm going to say this, Dr. Montero, that if we look at Stack Records and we look at Sam Cooke, both two great writers. On the A side, they both wrote Shake. On the B side, Otis wrote Sitting on the Dock of the Bay. And Sam's B-side was Change Gonna Come. See, I'm going to say this, that Nina Simone and Gil Scott-Heron were true to what they were about. See, I'm going to say that they both took jazz to another level. Gil Scott-Heron and also Nina Simone. That the civil rights, the struggle of the civil rights. She was a queen and he was the king of the struggle of the civil rights, man. They stayed focused. All the biography that I wrote, all the biography of the ex-colored man, the whole thing of that, the subject of that me and Ms. Rock used to talk about all the time is how you stay in America and end up black. That's the whole idea, man. How you can be whitewashed and absorbed by what America was. But she stayed true to what she was, a black queen.
That's right, and a revolutionary. And that, that's the thing. We were the documentary that you're talking about that we showed at the symposium was entitled "What Happened." I think it's called "What Happened to Nina," and we were saying, well, why was it titled that? I mean, it was not what happened to Nina, what the system did to her, how they tried to erase her and destroy her, and how she had to flee the country. And she went to Liberia. And, in order to make a living, she had to go to Europe. But she suffered from depression, as many geniuses do. But
it's ironic that you say that. There's a line that Lauryn Hill says, while you're imitating Al Capone, I'll be Nina Simone.
Oh, wow.
And the fact that she was attacked similarly, and they questioned her psychological status, they had tax things and economic ways they tried to get at her. She literally, spoke that prophecy and looked up to somebody who ended up, having the government attack her in similar ways.
That's right. And that's a good point that you make. The mere identification with Nina Simone can get you certain treatment, marginalized and isolated.
And an attempt to seemingly to reduce the impact of her legacy in a similar way. Because today, when you hear African Americans talk about hip hop and females, they'll always say Lauryn Hill. But when you hear these mainstream documentaries and the way they position history and females, they'll talk about Nicki Minaj and try to jump to MC Lyte in a way that's like they try to erase what could be described as a Lauryn Hill era. So I see that similarity.
I think part of it is we have to make a distinction between entertainment, which can descend into, for us, a kind of cooning, minstrelsy. We have to make a distinction between that and art. Art is the work of genius, is the work of courage. And there are few artists in history who have not been organic to the people. And I would just recommend sometime that maybe we want to do a show just on Nina Simone and listen to her music.
One of the names I was thinking, I'm not familiar with Indira Gandhi as much, but I know I have my own issues with Gandhi's stance with the racial thing and all, some insensitivity to African Americans. But I was
she was not related to Gandhi.
That's what I'm saying. So that helped clear it up for me. When you said her name in that mix, I said, we're not talking about the same tradition, obviously. But one name that I was thinking about that I thought might have been in that list when you were first discussing it, Miriam Makeba.
Yeah, definitely. But
honorable mention?
We couldn't do all of them.
No, I feel you.
Because, once you did Winnie Mandela, huge figure who was attacked by her own people after she had fought so valiantly against apartheid. And, one part...
Consistently, too.
Yes, one part in the documentary is when they drug her before the so-called Truth and Reconciliation Commission, headed by Bishop Desmond Tutu. And he had the audacity to try to get her to apologize for standing up for her people. And if people have a chance to see that documentary, it would be very worthwhile.
And say the title again. What happened to
Winnie?
Nina?
It's called
the other one. Okay.
It's one on Winnie, and then the one on Nina is called. I think it's called What Happened to Nina.
And the one about Winnie Mandela is just called Winnie.
Winnie.
Okay. Because they love Desmond Tutu, for those reasons, like you said. Once it's the same thing today, whether politics, business, entertainment, those that compromise in the tradition of Claude Anderson discussing meritorious manumission, they're exalted. That's the way that the enslaved Africans could gain their freedom. They report a revolt, and they saved the master's life. So it's a similar type of competition today. Claude Anderson would argue there's a lot of black people still trying to secure meritorious manumission, even in theology, even in the cloth, and say, well, if I side with the power structure and I go against,
then this becomes the role of the political education of the people. And that's why to reclaim the names of people like Du Bois, of people like Nina Simone, of people like James Baldwin, and the fact that this is not taught even in universities, for God's sake.
That's true.
Who knows it? And so we have to do it. And it's just such a credit to this station that we're able to have this conversation, believe me.
And make these connections.
That's
like
right.
you said,
That's
having these cross-cultural connections and cross-generational conversations where we can show all the connections between what's happening today and what's happened in the past.
And all of the possibilities.
Yeah, because the future generations, they can take some heed. Because I think an interesting juxtaposition in this conversation is somebody who I feel is a true genius, who has been utterly co-opted and destroyed. And I would say that's Kanye West. I think Kanye West is a true musician and a true genius, but he suffered in so many ways. Just the pressure of being under this microscope and in this whirlwind and all the various pressures that come from industry and from media and from the community, that some people don't have the support system, the organization, or seem the cultural foundation to weather that storm, like a Nina Simone, who could be on stage singing about these issues seeming completely unfazed, who could be in interviews and totally redefine questions and shift the paradigm and reframe conversations in a way where she's so centered it doesn't even matter what the interviewer is saying.
But see, there's a difference.
We'll talk about that difference. I think that's what you're about to say. That's important because that's what we want to know. See, what is the difference?
The difference is, what do you value?
There you go.
See, if you value celebrity and money and acceptance, you're going to behave one way.
I hear you.
If you value freedom and your people, you're going to behave in a completely different way. And
maybe even marry different people.
Well,
shout out to Kim Kardashian.
Yeah, you'll marry different people because you got different values.
No, it's true.
And I'm telling you, if you put Nina Simone together with Winnie Mandela, I mean, just put it together. What would that mean if people could see them rather than what the media feeds us? I mean, it makes, they're my hero.
No, I hear you.
They're my role models.
Especially what's going on in politics and music today.
That's right.
To just have that alternative.
Then when you get Du Bois, who says, look, at the end of my life, I've come to the conclusion that black people will never be free under this system. It is designed to keep us enslaved.
Yeah, he didn't die a young man.
No, he lived a long life,
so
and his life was dedicated to both knowledge and action and struggle. And he comes to that conclusion. And, he's invited to go to Ghana, where Nkrumah is the president. So what does that say about Nkrumah? What does that say about other African leaders of that era, such as Patrice Lumumba? They had these views that the system of capitalism, which was what led to slavery and colonialism, that system was not going to free black people. Now, I'm not against small business people at all, but let's talk about the totality of the system. We need a change, or at least a critical discussion about it.
And that's interesting degree of nuance that needs to be implemented. I'm glad you iterated, your support and understanding of small business and juxtaposing that with your adamant critique of the larger system of capitalism. Because I think people fall into this polarized, divisive, tug-of-war type of conversations about these various ideologies. That's why when they hear these names, they get triggered. Like the whole democratic socialists, even the people on Fox News, you can see them be, viscerally jarred just by the conceptualization of any degree of socialism, or even socialism being considered in a normal political conversation as acceptable dialogue or rhetoric.
We need to teach.
Yeah, we need nuance.
We need to teach it. You get people, they can go through college and graduate school and never know the difference between capitalism and socialism. There's never been a discussion of it.
Well, we got a couple minutes. I would love for you, in closing, I would love for you to provide some of this context and nuance, and just in terms that you think would be most beneficial for our listeners, just define briefly capitalism, socialism, and communism.
I'll put it very simply. The system that we have, which is capitalism at the stage where banks control everything. They are the dominant force. A few banks, financial institutions are what dominate the system. What it does is sucks the wealth out of the society into this top 1% or 1/10 of 1%. I mean, that's what we're talking about. Socialism, in its most expansive sense, says the wealth, the income, the opportunity of a society belongs to the people who produce it, or whose ancestors produced it.
Hey now.
And that wealth should be redistributed to the people. That's the answer to making small businesses work. Give the working people a decent income. They can then support small businesses.
So even my free market lovers who are, ardent capitalists can still understand and come to some consensus with regard to certain aspects of this idea.
I think every small business person should be a socialist, should be for the redistribution of wealth among the people. Everybody that believes in any kind of human values, be it universal health care, free higher education.
And they try to turn that against us using trigger words like socialism to even deny the very people that would benefit most from those policies.
The trigger word is capitalism for me.
No, but you located, the history.
I associate capitalism with slavery, colonialism, and war. Now
we need to redefine these terms. Because they have it set up. So, ironically, Lauryn Hill has a line. She says, "Truth comes, we can't hear it. We've been programmed to fear it."
Yeah.
So we are structured in a way, social engineered in a way that when you do come saying, "This is what I think about capitalism," they're like, "Oh man, you're the enemy," and you're like, "No, I'm actually trying to help the people get their wealth and benefit from it." But it's ironic how the system is structured in a way that the more you are rooted in this truth, the more unlikely people are to say, "Hey, you're really onto something," and vote for somebody outside their interests who's helping, or he's even part of the 1%.
Yeah.
And put him in office.
Yeah, put him in office because he says that he is going to do something for us and it never gets done.
No, I think that's a good place to close. I think we've done as documented. We've covered a lot of bases today, and we've provided some nuance and some context. And I hope that even issues that you knew things about, you know more about at the end of the program. And I think this idea of redefining terms is of critical importance, as Dr. Montero helped to give some depth and some nuance and some perspective, on issues that can be beneficial from our perspective.
Definitely.
The way they define these terms might not be the way we need to define these terms.
Absolutely.
Based on the history, of how they describe freedom and how they describe liberty and how they describe the person versus 3/5 of the person. We might have no historical business identifying and defining words and terms the way that our oppressor has and continues to do. Hell, they say that somebody's a president when we know he's... Let me stop right there. But some people question his ability, to read. We're going to get into that tomorrow. Some people argue that he's borderline illiterate. But we'll talk about it. I'm not saying he is. I'm not saying he isn't. I'm just saying it's going to be a lovely day, whether he can read or not. We thank you all for being a part of this program. Word on Business segment, Dr. Anthony Montero for the Year of Du Bois segment. And the most important part, consistent theme is you. And we thank you for waking up with word, y'all.
When the day that lies ahead